After death and divorce, the most difficult thing is violence. Hello, this is Catarina Paredes and Tamara Socek, and we will be discussing the dynamics of family violence.
We want to start by exposing the most common myths surrounding family violence. First, violent behavior is a normal part of being human. This is not correct, seeing that human being can control his emotions. Second, violence is sometimes necessary for discipline. Currently, there are many studies that show that violence, in fact, inhibits children's ability to learn. Third, it only happens in low-income families. This is not true, since the victim can be from any social class. And finally, home problems stay at home. The latter is one of the ways in which the abuser cleverly distance the victim from all possible supportive contact.
Just to give you an idea of how prevalent abuse is in families, we have some general statistics for you. 30% of women experience violence in their lifetime. 1 in 6 people over 60 suffer abuse from others. 3 in 4 children ages 2 to 4 suffer abuse at home. 1 in 5 girls are sexually abused. 1 billion children have suffered violence in the last year, and 41% of women experience violence from an intimate partner. There are two powerful predictors when it comes to violence. Whenever there is an inequality of power or an inequality of resource, violence or abuse is more likely to happen.
Below, we will give a brief explanation of the 8 types of abuse that you can encounter. Control. It is a way to dominate the victim with subtle actions, such as not letting the victim receive visits from friends or family. It does not allow the victim to choose her clothing. It is possessive and encourages the victim's dependence on the abuser, preventing him from making decisions even from simple things without the consent of the abuser. Physical abuse starts with threats and includes hitting, beating, slapping, shaking, choking, pinching, hair pulling, burning, hitting with an object, depriving you of sleep, food, or helping if you are sick or injured. Emotional abuse is a type of abuse in the most common, on the one that is less recognized as abuse. It is any way of taking advantage of a person's vulnerability, insecurity, or character. For example, degrading criticism that hurts the victim's confidence. Another example is not allowing the victim to practice the religion that she or he practices, or using religion to commit abuse and any form of control that disempowers the victim.
Sexual abuse is any form of sexual activity that happens between two people where one does not give consent. Another form is isolation. This is where the victim is isolated from her circle of friends. I have a friend that this happened to. She was dating this guy who was seriously jealous and controlling. And one time this friend called me and we were on the phone together, talking with each other, and he was next to her and he had the impression that I was nice. And a little while later, he started to become very controlling. He started beating her up and he started deleting all of the contacts on her phone, only leaving my number on her phone because he felt like I was nice. He was just so jealous of anyone and didn't want anyone to have influence on her. Verbal abuse is another way of abuse. This can easily happen when we criticize or demean others to get what we want. It can be with a threatening tone, an angry tone, to be belittling, demeaning, degrading. It is a form of emotional abuse. I once observed this with a couple where the husband was basically walking behind his wife in the home and telling her that nothing that she was doing was right. Using gender privilege is another form of abuse. I think this mindset where we think that because of our gender, we are worth more than the other, is just a fundamental perspective that always or can very likely lead to violence. Economic abuse is another type. This is when a spouse will have control over money and decide for the other how he or she can use it. So by not allowing your wife to buy herself clothes or not allowing your children to have pocket money, it's just really another manifestation of a controlling mindset.
Can I have a look at your phone? I'll be quick.
Okay.
It's just gonna be you two, right?
Yeah.
Well, call me when you're done. Okay?
Okay. Gosh, that was so funny. You're Miss Popular today. Sorry. Is everything okay? It's just John. Again.
Through this graph, we can identify three central pillars of family interaction, which are cohesion, adaptability, and communication. Family systems that do not have a good balance of these elements are those that are in the mid-range or extreme area. The families that are located in the area are the ones that report some types of abuse. The family circumplex model is an efficient tool to detect and provide accurate support to families suffering from family violence. This video exemplifies in a practical way through an experiment one of the pillars that is a communication and how this affects the family system.
You're a dummy!
We got 2 jars of rice. We put a sad face on one and a happy face on one. And we put an equal amount of rice in each.
We started saying kind things to one and mean things to another.
You're the best rice ever. Good rice. And then you would talk to one of the rices, say things like, you're yucky, you're an ugly rice, and like, I want to eat your rice. And then for the nice rice, you'd have a choice of whatever you wanted to say, but it had to be kind.
The sad rice literally developed mold, and it was just really unbelievable to watch the month progress and to see that happen.
Oh, look at that!
We were all thinking, like, wow, how can this be happening?
I do not understand the science behind this, and we were just kind of game to try it. The kids thought we were nuts.
I didn't even think the kids would even talk to it very much. You're weird. Hey, dummy. Weird. Dummy. Dummy rice. You're gross and ugly. And you have to roll. And you smell. Have a good Thanksgiving.
I guess one thing that really stood out to me is just even we had some girls serenade the rice each morning.
Tell me secrets out of blood, I'm blocking your true falls into the unknown.
We had some kids who have said, you know, let's do something to cheer up the sad rice when this is all over.
I hugged the sad rice. Oh, I like that you learn how words react to people when you're doing it to the rice.
As we see in the experiment, the interaction that aims to hurt, and whether through anger or indifference, has adverse effects on rice, which reminds us how careful we must be with the hearts of our family members. Family interactions that provide emotional connections and is structured and trustworthy have positive effects on the family and even more importantly, on the family system.
So what are the factors that contribute to family violence? What makes violence more likely? So one of the things is perpetrators were victims themselves. So if people grow up knowing violence in their family of origin, it is more likely that they will use violence in their families. Another thing is lacking awareness of child development or having unrealistic expectations. Especially as parents, when we have unrealistic, when we don't know what to expect from a 2-year-old, let's say, then we might become violent because we expect the child to behave differently than the child actually can. So it's really important to help educate parents to know what to expect from children. A stressed environment, something that we can relate to. When we have a stressed, overwhelming environment, it often puts us into like a survival mode, where we have limited empathy, we function, and we want others to function too. So when our world seems out of control and stressful, we tend to want to control others around us, and this can lead to violence of any type with family members. Suffering from poor impulse control. So either this is something that we that is part of our genetic makeup, or we have learned it, probably a combination of both. But when we are very impulsive and we have difficulties managing our emotions, it's more likely that we will resort to violence. Experiencing financial difficulties. So this is something that I think many of us can relate to. The stress of not having enough money or having a lot of debt can impact the way that we feel about ourselves, the way that we see others. And again, we might feel the need to control those around us in order to feel in control ourselves. Low self-esteem. So when we don't feel good about ourselves, we might put others down to feel better about ourselves. That can also lead to violence of any form. Low parental involvement. So when we're not spending much time with our children and not really building the relationship, then there's less empathy there, and it's more likely that we might then be harsh in our disciplining, and that might lead to abuse. Now, here there's a short video of a woman who is observing a family, and she spots abuse. It is not too violent, but it gives us an example of what domestic abuse can look like. There's something called the violence cycle. It's basically the life cycle of abuse. It starts with the tension building phase, where the perpetrator will use threats, verbal abuse, and intimidation, and the victim becomes scared. And then that leads to the explosion phase, where the perpetrator can't deal with his emotions anymore, or with the anger, and the acute battering incident happens, such as emotional, sexual, or physical abuse. Once that is finished, there's a calming down phase called the honeymoon phase. That's where the abuser will apologize. He will promise that he'll never do it again. But often also he will start to, he will blame the victim. So he won't take responsibility for his actions. He will tell the victim it's because of how he or she behaved. This is a video that shows the tension building phase all the way up to the explosion phase. However, it ends before the actual battering starts. So in case you're concerned to watch it, it's okay to watch, but it does show you the tension building phase.
I have not seen you. So long, and you're my neighbor.
I know.
Oh, congrats on the baby.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you need to join us for dinner.
Definitely.
Yeah, we should totally do that. Sorry, I gotta put this down.
Okay.
We should go to Jess's. I haven't seen him in a while.
Jess or Mark?
What are you talking about?
Are you seriously gonna deny it? I've seen you two.
What? You're being ridiculous.
You're my wife! Okay, you got that? Look, we just need to spend more time together. All right, just plan another night. All right? Good.
I'll be back later.
Oh, where are you going?
Jess and I are going to get her nails.
No, not tonight, honey.
I already told Jess that I'm on my way. So
I know, but it's been a long week. We've hardly seen each other.
No, we've been planning this for months,
I
and
know,
I
but
already
look,
told you.
look,
So I'm.
let's have dinner together.
No,
We
we've been
haven't-
planning this for months, and I already told
I
you
said
that I'm not.
no.
Well, I said yes. I said.
Listen,
I'm
look at
going.
this
No,
house.
Look at
You
this.
haven't done anything
Yeah,
with it.
I
Have
haven't done anything. You haven't done anything.
Are you kidding me? I've been at work all
I'm not
week.
kidding you.
What
I
you
don't
been
care.
doing?
I don't care. When was the last time you did?
Are you
I
kidding
am not
me?
asking for your permission. I'm going.
You brought this on yourself.
So it's complicated. Since we've been learning about the social exchange theory this week, there's always costs and rewards. Even in abusive relationships, there's rewards. And so before making the decision to leave, a woman will, or a man, but usually it's often the woman, will think through what are the costs and what are the rewards. We had a BYU video this week with 2 questions, and the answers to those questions kind of determined for the victims whether they would leave or not. The first question was, will I be better off? So the rewards versus the costs. And the second question is, can I do it? Do I have what it takes? And some of the costs are the fear of retaliation, which means the fear that the abuse will get even worse. Another cost is, losing the children, the fear of losing the children to the abuser, financial difficulties, and also fear of what will come next. Some of the rewards, even in an abusive relationship, are feeling loved. If we think of the honeymoon phase of the cycle of abuse, where the abuser brings gifts and apologizes, and we feel loved during that time. Being taken care of financially, and also knowing what to expect can be classed as some of the rewards. And to exemplify this complexity, this is a short video with an interview of somebody who was in an abusive relationship.
It can take a survivor about 7 times to actually leave a relationship. A lot of that is due to the complexities of power and control that they're experiencing.
Something that you have to understand about the dynamics of how strong the manipulation and control is.
I was in a typical abusive situation where I was being kept from my girlfriends, where I was not in contact with my family, where I was completely isolated.
One of the things that abusers do is they don't allow the victim to have a job. I was working full-time, but my name was not on our accounts, so I couldn't get any money. I didn't have a key to our house. My husband at the time was not very thrilled with my level of expertise around finances, and he thought that I had spent too much on groceries that week. He picked up the kids' fish tank and threw it at me, and then he started picking up other things, and so I put my daughter in her car seat, and I ran out of the house as he threw a pot at me with my daughter and my then 5-year-old son. I called every emergency resource in the phone book. Every one of them was full.
Victims of family violence have to assume certain cost of part of this family dynamic. We will mention some of the most obvious. In the physical aspect, this dynamic produces brain injuries, disabilities, and chronic health issues. Mentally, victims of domestic violence have an increased risk for post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and suicide. Emotionally, this is a great risk for maladjustment, hurts a child's self-esteem, and impacts the self-worth of the spouse. It also produces problems with the alcohol and drugs use and impacts the sense of security and attachment of a child. This video clearly summarizes the effects that occur at the brain level due to family violence. Consider that it is vital to share this information with those you know who are going through a similar situation.
So one of the things we wanted to show you today was your brain MRI.
Susan Contreras has had a rough life.
There's your brain, and I'm going to show you there's your eye.
She's never played football, but shares some of the same symptoms of many players.
Arms out to the side.
Memory loss, seizures, and headaches, all from repeated head trauma.
I knew it was from the abuse. I didn't have any of those problems before.
Contreras says she ended up homeless and unemployed after leaving an abusive relationship.
This is a woman who came to see us after many, many years of being abused. The similarities between this population and the professional athlete are astounding.
While brain injuries from concussions in NFL players have garnered a lot of attention, experts now say domestic violence victims also face a great risk. Studies show head and neck injuries are common among abuse victims and that the assaults may cause brain injuries in at least 60% of survivors.
And that force causes the brain to move within the skull. When it moves within the skull, it can bash up against the skull and it can cause tearing of blood vessels. It can cause damage to the brain tissue.
Dr. Cardenas says brain injuries and domestic assaults have been largely under-recognized in the medical community, why he's now heading up a unique program at the Barrow Neurological Institute in Phoenix. It was the brainchild of social worker Ashley Bridwell who saw too many domestic violence victims living in shelters and suffering in silence, unaware their beatings are likely the cause of their constant pain and confusion.
Okay, finally, we leave our references page for you. And we thank for your attention, and we would love to read your comments and questions on this topic.